Hello there, my name is Pankaj Mishra. You are watching News9 Live, and today we are going to discuss something which is very critical. Critical in a manner that in the days to come, if India has to secure its borders, its waters, its airspace, then obviously the technical know-how, the advancements that have to be made as far as the defense sector is concerned, it has to be spot on. Now, India's monster submarine deal and whether it will make us Atmanirbhar under the sea, this is something that needs a closer look today. Why we are talking about it? Well, because two rival consortia have submitted bids to the Defense Ministry on August 1, 2023, both vying to build 6 AIP-equipped conventional hunter-killer submarines for the Indian Navy. This will be the largest, most expensive conventional submarine acquisition program in the world. But will it prove to be the answer to India's quest for indigenous submarine technology? These are two European defense manufacturing giants seeking to win a 400 billion rupee, which is a roughly 4.8 billion US dollar order to build submarines in India as the South Asian nation looks to strengthen its navy to counter China's expanding naval presence in the Indo-Pacific region. Indian officials are currently evaluating competing bids to build 6 of the vessels in the country. Senior Indian officials are also aware of these developments, said that asking the details of this particular deal would obviously be out in the public knowledge in some time from now on. One bid is from Germany's ThyssenKrupp AG, along with the Mumbai-based Mazgaon Dock Shipbuilders Limited, with the other was submitted by Spain's Navantia in partnership with private shipyard Larsen & Toubro. Indian Navy will go for the best and the largest transfer of technology that is being offered. Today, I am joined by two gentlemen here. One, a young journalist, Deepak Bhatana, Deepak, and the other one, Sandeep Unnithan. Obviously, Sandeep, always a pleasure to have you here. Sandeep Unnithan, expert on defense matters, I would say. Personally, he has invested a lot of time. And I would say, Deepak, and to begin with you first, for you to be, on this young pedestal in the career, to choose a topic like this, which not just involves defense sector, but also involves the business of acquisitions, the business of how two countries would trade. What made you go for this story first?
Well, to be frank, I did find myself initially out of my depth, considering this is submarine technology. But this, this can prove to be a game changer for the Indian Navy. And this is quite frankly history in the making. It's been a privilege to work on this story.
Right. Sandeep, obviously now this huge deal that we are talking about here, India is actually, has become, is at the center as of now. Two European companies vying to woo India, impress India, obviously, one from the private sector, one from the government sector. How do you look at this, the growing prowess and identity of India, one, and secondly, getting the best?
Absolutely, Pankaj. In fact, congratulations, Deepak. That's the story that he just scooped. He just broken the story of the fact that the two rival consortia have finally submitted their bids to the government of India, and this is, as you just mentioned, the Spanish Navantia with Larsen & Toubro and MDL with TKMS. And Deepak has been actually following this story for a couple of months, and he's looking at our deficiencies in submarine building, and he kind of scooped these details, the fact that no one's really got the fact that it was actually, the bids were submitted on the 1st of August, and this was kept under wraps for reasons best known to the government. And I guess it's because, it's a submarine arm and it's a silent service.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, that's the way to look at it, definitely.
But it's really interesting because, after many decades, as Deepak has kind of put down so eloquently in the documentary, the fact that after several decades, this could be yet another chance for India to be finally self-sufficient in submarine building. And this is a capability we've been trying very hard to acquire over the last couple of decades. And this is literally the final shot at getting conventional submarine building technology.
Right.
Pankaj.
Right. Gentlemen, we are also joined by Captain D.K. Sharma, former spokesperson of Indian Navy. Thank you so much. Captain Sharma, for speaking to us. Obviously, we are today discussing something that mostly is kept under wraps, and for all the good reasons, I would say, because when it comes to acquisitions of such a large proportion, obviously there are several factors at play. But having said that, looking from India's perspective, what kind of fillip, what kind of boost do you think this particular acquisition will have as far as the Navy is concerned?
First of all, good afternoon, Sandeep and Deepak. I had a long interaction with Deepak yesterday, and the gentleman sitting with you, Sandeep Unithan, is the guru in all these things. So let's not, undermine his knowledge on this. Yes, I can, throw some light on it, but we have to go back quite a number of years, because all these plans which are now unfolding were actually cleared by the government, the CCS, in 1998. The fact that Indian Navy got the submarine arm in the late 60s, and then we had another shot at it when we got 10 boats from Russia in the late 80s going up to late 90s. We also had 4 boats from HTW, two of which were made in India in MDL, and 2 were imported from there. So the era of those boats is coming to an end. And that is what was actually visualized by the naval hierarchy in those days. And I'm talking of 95, 96, that in spite of having all these boats with us, what is the way ahead? Because every boat has got a finite life. We can't exploit the boat for infinite period. So that is the time when the government had put down and taken an approval from the government of India, and the CCS approval exists for making 24 boats over a period of 30 years. That is from 1998 to 2028. By the time these Foxtrot class boats, which came first from Russia, then the EKMs and the HGW, which we got from the Western Bloc, all these boats would have done their job, and rightly so. The Project 75 was approved, and it has, of course, now materialized with a lot of delays. You can call it a delay of almost a decade, because what boat was supposed to come in 2012 was finally handed over to us and to the Indian Navy in 2017, and now we have 5 of them. That is the Project 75 Scorpion boats. But that doesn't solve the jigsaw puzzle, because the EKMs are now getting old, the strength is reducing, their availability, and the prowess also goes down because they are old boats now. So now the plan is what you're talking about, that these 2 RFPs which have been submitted, and this is a strategic partnership model which will now go through the paces in the MOD, where it will be critically examined by a very high level committee, and it will be seen how much of indigenization could be achieved with each proposal, and how much of the QRs they are meeting with us, because there are very, very stringent QRs. One is AIP is a must. Number 2, it has to be better in stealth features vis-a-vis the Scorpions. Number 3, it has to have a capability of tube launch missiles. So these 3 changes are going to be a very, very significant changes insofar as submarine construction is concerned. And then comes the point of Atmanirbharta, that how much TOT is going to happen. Now you know it, that in a strategic partnership model, the OEM, that is the Germans and the Spanish company, the TKMS and Navantia, are coming to India, and we have our own yards. One is a private yard, L&T, and one is the DPSU. So how much of the technology will get transferred? How much hand-holding will take place? All this is yet to be seen now. But yes, it is online now. And we anticipate, and with the kind of focus given by the government and the strategic atmosphere in our geopolitical area and our area of responsibility, this is now, this has to be on a fast track, and it cannot be delayed any further.
Right. Captain Sharma, obviously very eloquently, yes, as you mentioned. Deepak, before we play out the documentary also in just a minute, I wanted to hear from you on the need for rejuvenation, the need for overhauling. How do you assess as far as the naval prowess is concerned, especially in the field of submarine?
So as of now, India's got about 16 conventional submarines. But the vision that was laid out in 1998 was for 24. A fleet of 24 submarines.
We're still 8 short as of now.
We're still 8 short. So the idea back then was that under the new program that they had initiated back in 1998, they wanted there were 2 projects. There was Project 75 and Project 75I. Now everyone here recognizes Project 75 as the submarines that have come out as the Scorpion class or the Kalvari class.
Right.
These are the 5 submarines that have come out in the last few years. The 6th one should be out later this year.
Okay.
Project 75I or Project 75 India was for slightly larger submarines that would have more of a focus on indigenization.
Right.
And that would lay the groundwork for establishing an Indian ecosystem for development of systems and equipment that is associated with submarines. So over the last few years, or rather the last few decades, we've built up proficiency in, say, the outer shell, building the outer shell of the submarines, and some of the parts inside, for instance, refrigeration equipment and the like. But even so, there are deficiencies on some fronts. For example, when we talk about propulsion, that is something that we still need to figure out. In this deal, we are going for AIP, so air independent propulsion. That is one of the requirements that have been laid out.
Okay, so that should be there. That's a must.
That should be there. And with this deal, India will get access to that technology. So what that does actually is that in conventional submarines, which are diesel electric, the submarine has to float up, almost surface, so that it can use its diesel engine to charge its batteries.
Okay.
And once charged with AIP, it can then stay underwater for weeks or even months at a time. So that is the capability that we are looking at.
Deepak, Sandeep, hearing Deepak narrate this, hearing Captain Sharma and Sandeep himself, it paints a picture which makes you feel somehow that you are surrounded with water and at the submarine. We have heard about it, we have seen so many movies on it, but trust me, it's easier said than done. Deepak's and Sandeep's documentary, India's Monster Submarine. Ladies and gentlemen, for you, without further ado.
In December 2023, the Indian Navy will commission the INS Vagshir, the 6th and the last of the Kalvari class submarines. This will be the culmination of the P-75 program. It's a milestone that highlights not just India's growing maritime power, but also a glaring chink in India's armor. Now, India is the only major power to not have designed and built its own submarines.
Both the Chinese and the Pakistanis are building up their submarine capabilities.
The way the PLA Navy is trying to exert its kind of a supremacy in the IOR.
Our submarine capabilities started declining a little bit as we went on. Some of the submarines had just gotten too old to be, continue to be effective.
So which means that we need to have more assets, or in fact minimum assets which need to be there to be acting as a deterrent, and also which protects and safeguards my interest in my areas of operation.
All this is set to change with a new defense acquisition, Project 75 India, or the P-75I program. P-75I can potentially transform Indian maritime presence. But is it the answer to India's underwater security needs? Can it kickstart India's submarine building industry? Can this monster submarine deal make India Atmanirbhar under the sea? In the late 1990s, the Indian Navy came up with an ambitious plan, a 30-year-long submarine building program for a fleet of 24 indigenous submarines. The first phase of this program involved two projects. Project 75, under which the Scorpene or the Calvary class submarines were built, and Project 75I for building larger and more indigenized submarines. Both projects were to be executed simultaneously, delivering 18 state-of-the-art attack submarines by 2030. But issues like design overreach in the Navy's staff qualitative requirements or NSQRs, disagreements on delivery schedules, liability clauses and technology transfer requirements meant that the P-75I project was delayed. P-75 meanwhile went ahead with a mandate for 6 Scorpene submarines. Despite several attempts through the 2010s, it was only in 2017 that P-75I finally took off. The MOD announced the P-75I would progress under a special procurement policy. The two rival consortia submitted their bids to the Defence Ministry on the 1st of August 2023. The first consortia is a tie-up between India's Mazagon Docks Limited and TKMS from Germany. Competing against them are India's Larsen & Toubro and Spanish state-owned defense shipbuilder Navantia. Both consortia vie to build 6 air-independent propulsion-equipped conventional hunter-killer submarines for the Indian Navy. There are provisions for full transfer of technology with the winning consortium guaranteeing the designs. The budget is 43,000 crore, but this could easily double. This is the largest, most expensive conventional submarine acquisition program in the world. It will galvanize India's core submarine and shipbuilding industry and enable development and building of submarines for the future. Patrolling silently in the depths of the Indian Ocean and beyond, the Indian Navy's submarine fleet guards some of the most strategic maritime regions in the globe. The Indian Navy currently operates a fleet of 16 conventional submarines or SSKs. They have capabilities like sea denial, surveillance and information gathering, landing of special operations forces and attacking land targets. They've performed their role to the highest of standards, but it suffers from a critical weakness. Age is catching up with India's submarines.
So there was, I think, a time when we had one nuclear submarine, the first INS Chakra on lease, and we had probably reached, I'm not very sure, a strength of 20 submarines in the submarine fleet based on both coasts. After that, the numbers started dwindling, and even if the numbers didn't dwindle too much, it was that some of the submarines had just gotten too old to be, continue to be effective.
The way the PLA Navy is trying to exert its, kind of a supremacy in the IOR. I'm not talking about SES, the South China Sea. In the Indian Ocean region, they're all over.
As a blue water force, considering the vast area of operations, operational philosophy centered on sea control, and in view of the growing threats in the Indian Ocean region, the importance of a state-of-the-art indigenous submarine fleet has been obvious for decades. In the past, India has made 2 different defense deals, and yet India still lacks indigenous submarine technology.
Fundamentally, what we've done with the Scorpene class, or before that the Shishumar class, has fundamentally been licensed production. Some part of it, a very minor portion, can perhaps yield some transfer of technology benefits that could come through the learning process.
It was a kind of a JV in which they transferred some expertise to us, whether it was bring or binding the boat together. But I don't think that we had the kind of technology transfer which we are looking for now.
P-75I is one more chance for India to get it right. As of now, the MOD is set to start the technical evaluation of the two submarines made by TKMS and Navantia. This is likely to last another 9 months. Then comes the field evaluation trials, and then eventually the price bids will be opened and the lowest bidder selected. This process could last until 2025, with the entire program spanning at least 15 years. This is the time to build all 6 submarines. The first submarine will not be delivered at least until 2032. In the meantime, geopolitics and geostrategy are taking their course. In the east, China is rapidly expanding its fleet of 75 submarines, adding on nuclear-powered and conventional submarines at an astonishing pace. They have a significant presence in the Indian Ocean region. By proxy, Pakistan, for instance, has just acquired 8 Yuan-class submarines from China and is acquiring the capability to build conventional submarines on its own.
Both the Chinese and the Pakistanis are building up their submarine capabilities. They are also building up their anti-submarine capabilities. And one of the big roles for submarines is anti-submarine warfare itself. What is a closer worry is, of course, Pakistan's plan, and they seem to be coming to, some kind of next steps onto the 8 Yuan class AIP equipped boats that they are buying from China. The other danger is that there is every likelihood that these boats might also be equipped with low yield, so-called the tactical nuclear missiles. Likewise, the Chinese have been deploying submarines fairly regularly, at great distances from Chinese bases, right all the way up to the Gulf of Aden, etc.
Permission to carry out urgent attack on enemy submarine south.
Look, Indian Navy is a navy which operates aircraft carrier. So there will be some element of submarines which will be providing a kind of defense to the CBG. So that will be the role of the fast moving boats, which is the SSNs. Then there will be a very definitive role of safeguarding our high value targets. Then is choking the other countries' sea lanes, that is outside their harbor. If your boats are positioned over there and you find a high value target and you target it, that also affects them. So this is how the submarines do play a role. The 75 India is a step up. AIP plug is a must in 75 India. Number 2, the tube launched missiles. That capability we want as a must in 75 India. So these 2-3 things are a must.
Now, Project 75I will not only protect India's maritime interests, but also boost India's core submarine building ecosystem. Its success will mean the culmination of Phase 1 of the Indian Navy's decades-old submarine building program and the creation of indigenous capabilities to design, develop and manufacture complex weapon systems for the future. This transformation cannot be allowed to fall prey to problems that have affected countless Indian defense projects. It is in India's interest to ensure that.
Right, quite comprehensive, Sandeep, there, Deepak. Obviously, the technology that, has been briefed, the requirements that are there. Sandeep, needless to say, technology is the need of the hour. But talking about this strategy, where it can be used best as of now, because these kind of submarines, obviously, the challenges that India faces are actually needed, much needed.
Absolutely, Pankaj. In fact, our experts have told us just the kind of threats that the Indian Navy faces. You have a two-front maritime front as well.
Exactly.
You have China on one side and Pakistan on the other. And China has actually transferred a whole lot of sensitive submarine technology to Pakistan.
Yes,
where they started building the 8 Yuan class submarines, the Angkor class.
Right.
And by the end of this decade, it's quite possible that the Pakistan Navy could have as many conventional submarines as the Indian Navy. You can just imagine
for a country of that size,
having a dozen or more conventional submarines. That's a huge game changer for the Pakistan Navy. And at the same time, the Indian Navy has to reckon with the Chinese submarines being deployed frequently into the Indian Ocean region. Coming back to your question, where would these Indian submarines be deployed? Now, a lot of specs about these submarines are not being publicized for obvious reasons. But what we know, based on the experts that we've spoken to, is the fact that you're looking at a submarine that's literally double the size of the Scorpion class submarines. The air independent propulsion that Deepak mentioned, Captain Sharma mentioned, it's something that will give a conventional submarine the ability to stay submerged like a nuclear powered submarine. You're talking of an underwater endurance of almost a month. And one of the regions that the Indian Navy wants to deploy its present and future conventional submarine force are the choke points into the Indian Ocean region, from where the Chinese submarines and their warships will enter the Indian Ocean region, right? And so you're looking at the Malacca Straits, the Ombai-Vetar Straits, the Sunda Straits, the Lombok Straits. So in the future, an Indian submarine fleet would want to be deployed in all of these choke points and prevent Chinese warships from entering the Indian Ocean region, which is India's sphere of influence, right? The IOR, it's very critical for the Indian Ocean, for the Indian Navy to maintain its hold over the Indian Ocean region. And that's kind of where China is pushing the envelope. And submarines, very clearly, Pankaj, given the proliferation of satellite technologies, and we've seen that going on with the Russia-Ukraine war. Anything that's on the surface is liable to be detected, targeted. And that is where the submarine is going to be a game changer in the oceans of the future of 2032 and 2035, when the first Project 75I submarines enter service. You're looking at an ocean which is going to be transformed with detection, surveillance capabilities and drones. And the best place to hide, Pankaj, is under the water.
Well, stealth is the key. Captain Sharma, you wanted to make a point. Please go ahead and also let us know that these acquisitions don't happen overnight. We saw this lovely piece of work, documentary, and your views also, lets us know that it's a time-taking process.
I just want to fill in the gap which Sandeep has very aptly brought out, that these boats cannot come overnight. But if you see the game plan of the government, the strategy planners, and the guys who are looking into the future, the way we have acquired the P8I, it's a long-range maritime reconnaissance, anti-submarine warfare aircraft. And of course, that was manpower intensive. There is a lot of manual labor in that. And this visit of our Honorable Prime Minister, where we have signed the deal for the Sea Guardian. Now, this capability gap, which is existing, of course, numerically, we are a little, not in comparison to what our neighbors are. If they have a number of boats, and China, of course, has got in a couple of dozens. But we are plugging the gaps till the time we don't address this issue of having adequate number of boats. Now, in the kill chain, like it is basically a game of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. How good you are at it and how network-centric your warfare is and how informed you are. So India, knowing fully well that Project 75 India is a bit delayed, we have shifted our focus parallelly. Not that 75 India is being ignored, not at all, but we have gone in for the MQ-9Bs, that is the Sea Guardians, Sky Guardians, which will cover our area of interest very, very strongly. And when I say this, what I have been made to understand that the number of aircraft, that is the UAVs which are coming for Indian Navy, that is 15 and 16 for the Air Force and Army, which of course will be used by them. But to look at our area of interest, that is the Indian Ocean region from east coast of Africa till the Malacca. That is what we are more bothered about. And we know that our numbers in the boats are pretty, limited. And also we were discussing that where will the boats be deployed? Yes, they will be deployed at the choke points. They will be used for safeguarding our interests, that is my Bombay High or wherever the exploration is taking place, so that they should not be endangered. And some will be used for slot interdiction, that where the enemy is moving around. And of course, we discussed about how the CBG also has to be protected, but that will be the role of the SSNs who have got adequate speed. So talking about all that, we are plugging all the holes. Yes, there is a problem. The Indian Ocean region is now, being infested by their assets, by the assets from China. They came here in 2008, 2006 in the garb of anti-piracy operations, and now you see they have a 24/7 presence in these waters. So whether it is, mapping our mapping the seabed, or they are looking at our salinity of the water, so that in the adverse times, or when the balloon goes up or whatever, they can use their boats, but they need to have that data. And that is why they are always here in, a 24/7, 365 days, some boat, some asset or something is here. So we are looking after that. Now, at least we are assured that none of their activity is going undetected.
Right.
That is, I can guarantee you. The moment they leave South China Sea, we know it, whether it is Mumbai Vatar, whether it is Lombok, whether it is Sunda, whether it is Malacca, or whether they are coming from the other side of Australia.
Right.
Any entrance into IOR is detected, and thereafter it is being shadowed. So, insofar as their presence is concerned, we know it. But yes, it is a challenge. And that is why this government has given due importance to the aviation branch, where we have got adequate number of PATIs, and soon we will have the Sea Guardians, so that the whole kill chain and the ISR capability is not found wanting.
Right. Captain Sharma, obviously stay with us. Deepak, talking about geostrategy, and I believe geopolitics also goes hand in hand. China having acquired a port in, say, Sri Lanka at Hambantota. Then there is a port called Gwadar in Pakistan. Now, looking at these movements, obviously it is being camouflaged for civic use, for common people's use, for domestic use. But do you believe that India at this point of time needs to be very cautious and wary of these developments as well?
I think we already are. If you look at defense establishment in India, we've been acutely aware of the changing scenarios in the Indian Ocean region. And we've been making our own efforts. Now, what Sir has mentioned earlier is that it'll take until 2032 for the first of the submarines to come in.
Right.
And that is actually just in, at the right time, because at least for the next 8-10 years, even Pakistan won't have its submarines, the modern ones. And most of those submarines that China does possess as of now are conventional submarines, which have, limitations. While they do have long legs, just traversing and patrolling is one thing and fighting is quite another.
Right.
So we have that 8-10 years of a window right now. India is making very positive efforts towards that, and on multiple fronts. In fact, if you talk about geostrategy, it's often said that China's advances in eastern Ladakh are actually supposed to divert us from, focusing on the Navy and focusing on the waters. So that's something that India is looking into.
More to it than what meets the eye. Sandeep, obviously talking about, the challenges that India faces, two-pronged, as you rightly mentioned. Talking about synergy, Captain Sharma mentioned about acquisition of drones from US, high-end drones, obviously for the armed forces and for Navy as well. That kind of synergy, where do you see the new submarines, the newest submarines fitting in there also?
No, actually, I think what Captain Sharma mentioned, that kill chain that he spoke of, I mean, that's a super macro
kill
view.
Chain. These are the terms. Lovely.
So it's like you're looking at the whole Indian Ocean region as a chessboard.
Right.
And all of these things that we're talking of, from submarines to drones and PATIs and warships, are all chess pieces.
Right.
And they form the entire chessboard. And so what the Navy is doing very cleverly over the last couple of years they've been at it, is to put in that whole network of assets, whether it's below the surface, on the surface, or above the surface, manned and unmanned. So you're looking at a very comprehensive coverage of the Indian Ocean region, that you have to have complete transparency of the sea space, right, and the airspace above it. And that's what they've been working on. So, I mean, this is our backyard, right? And we have to kind of protect the Indian Ocean region. This is the only ocean named after a country, soon to be the world's third largest economy.
As well. Yes.
And so this, and the maritime, aspect plays a very key role in all of that. And that essentially is where the submarine arm also comes in. That it has to come in a very big way. Like you're talking of Sea Guardians and the drones that India is acquiring from the United States. In addition to the P-75Is, you need to have underwater drones as well. And that, I think, is another frontier that the Indian Navy really needs to hit very soon. Because if you're looking at drones as replacing manned aircraft, the Sea Guardians are doing admirable, duties for the Indian Navy in terms of the sheer ability to cover vast stretches of ocean with very little, human intervention. Otherwise, you can think of literally the thousands of hours of patrol time that P8Is will have to do. Precious, fuel has to be burned, man-hours have to be deployed, and you have these drones doing that, doing the bulk of all this heavy lifting. That is something that the underwater drones could actually do as well, and that probably should be the next frontier that the Navy should be looking at. Why only 6 P-75Is? Why not 100 unmanned, underwater drones to do all the surveillance tasks?
Definitely. And Sandeep, trust me, I mean, I was just going to say that only the youngest of the lot, Deepak, would stay here to see that. But trust me, the kind of need that India has, the world has as of now, just to secure the borders, to keep maintain peace. I think it would be done, sooner than expected. I believe, underwater drones, be it these high-end submarines, for that matter. And I guess every country is vying in order to, have the best ones for there. Deepak, I've been told that we have to play that documentary once again. But before that, I want to give you the final word, and later on we'll have a chat with Captain Sharma also. In your view, is India's approach towards modernizing its weaponry, modernizing its army, navy, air force, an approach that is the need of the hour, or is it something that is incumbent on any government that comes to power? What was your opinion when you met the Honorable Rear Admiral, when you met Captain Sharma during the filing of this interview?
I personally feel that, and that is the thing about policies in, nations which have, say, single-minded policies. So one thing I would want everyone to note is that the larger policy framework, India doesn't quite deviate from it, no matter who's in power. What happens though is some projects may be expedited, and we can respond to the challenges that come across. But you don't really see, modern nations, functional nations don't really do U-turns when it comes to their policies, unless there's something which is exceptionally, groundbreaking, something which just changes the chessboard altogether. You don't see about turns happening. I don't feel that India has done anything like that. But what we've seen in the past few years is that the pace of growth, the pace of modernization, the focus there has been a new intensity to it.
Right.
And there should be, our interests today are multifaceted. We have, concerns not just in the Indian Ocean region, but across the globe. India has to protect its interests.
India has to, and that's non-negotiable, as has been the custom. Captain Sharma, final word again from you before we play out that documentary.
What I will say is that the country can rest assured. Things are falling into place. Yes, there are some delays, but those delays are being addressed, and that is why the new model, which Sandeep is also telling, the strategic partnership model. Once a private player is there, you will find things, getting hastened up, and technology transfer. We are looking at it. We are also offering them very good terms and conditions. So it's all a matter of few months. Let them be examined, and I'm sure 75 is behind us now. 75 India will start soon, and then you will have the combination of this 75 and 75 India, which is the project 76. So this caters for the 18 boats, and 6 are, as Sandeep will also tell you, that they, during the time of then Defence Minister, Mr. late Manohar Parrikar sir, it was decided that 6 will go towards SSN, but I am not aware of it, what decision has been taken on it. But yes, there is nothing to worry. Delays are there, but we are plugging all the gaps, and the Indian Navy and the Government of India and the MOD is solidly backing the plans of the Navy, and I'm sure everything will be fine.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for this riveting conversation, and icing on the top would be the documentary that will be playing out for you once again. And trust me, be it the stealth under the sea, as Sandeep mentions, be it the game of drones that plays out above the sea level, the armed forces, the Indian Air Force, all of them working together in synergy, and that's how the borders are kept safe and the future threats are neutralized. Take a look.
In December 2023, the Indian Navy will commission the INS Vagshir, the 6th and the last of the Kalvari class submarines. This will be the culmination of the P-75 program. It's a milestone that highlights not just India's growing maritime power, but also a glaring chink in India's armor. Now, India is the only major power to not have designed and built its own submarines.
Both the Chinese and the Pakistanis are building up their submarine capabilities.
The way the PLA Navy is trying to exert its, kind of a supremacy in the IOR.
Our submarine capabilities started declining a little bit as we went on. Some of the submarines had just gotten too old to be, continue to be effective.
So which means that we need to have more assets, or in fact minimum assets which need to be there to be acting as a deterrent, and also